Welcome. I'm Dr. David Rosensweet, and you've turned your dial to I Wonder Doctor. And in this segment of being live all around the world, the earth. So hello to you, everyone, everywhere who's tuning into us. I want to open this with how one of our amazing staff entitled this, "The Elephant of All Elephants." I know I need to change, but I don't do it. I start doing it, but then I let it fade away. I'm so impressed with this because no matter how much I know as a physician, it all comes down to what can someone implement, actually do in the course of everyone's got busy lives with lots of things going on. And even though we might be inspired to do something, the elephant of all elephants, the elephant in the room is, how do I do this? I want to do it, I try to do it, I promised to do it, I committed to do it, I forgot to do it. At any rate, along the way, because I've addressed this personally and with so many patients over the years, this is what I see that really works. And here's how I learned it. In the early days, I would have a 2.5-hour session, initial session with a new patient. And at the end of that session, through all that I learned about them and from all the examination that I had done on them, I had a long list of things, usually 15, 20, 30 things that I thought, we should do this, 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 and this, and this. Well, that didn't last very long because they would come back to me for their follow-up consultation. They had the look of consternation on their face and embarrassment because they were sort of overwhelmed by all that they had to do and they weren't able to implement anything. Well, that set me off on a path of learning how to do it differently. And here's what I've learned about, and this is what we do, is we choose one thing, because on any list of new possibilities that someone it would benefit them to do, we select one. Together we do it. And we make a plan to implement that one thing, and then that's the one thing that they think about, and however long it takes, a week, a month, a year. The beautiful thing that happens is that is a doable thing. And they will integrate that into their lives, and once they have, then we take on the second thing to do. And from one thing might be changing your diet, and then it might be one change within the diet. It's one thing at a time. And then once someone has succeeded at doing one thing successfully, they start to get the idea, I can do the next thing successfully. So that's how we proceed in I Wonder Doctor. And to facilitate this with you, one other thing we've learned is that having a human being in assisting you in the process can be such an aid. Someone you can talk to, someone who knows and helps you select that priority, someone who can check in with you from time to time, and you can check in with them to tell them, this is what's going on, this is what I thought we were doing, this is what it's so helpful. And so today is launch day for that human being. If you go to our website, iwonderdoctor.com, you can have a session with a health coach and review your situation and see if you like the coach and see if they can help you along the way. Anyway, just one thing. In fact, that's the whole intent behind our video series, is each video we want someone to leave with just one thing that makes sense, that they might be able to implement. And that's how you develop your program from start to finish. And then having a human being to assist you in that process. I Wonder Doctor in a nutshell. So I want to address some questions, and if you have any questions, we're live, and you could call in to 888-502-8886. And we have already received several questions in the email, so I'm going to start with those. And if that phone rings, you'll watch me jump, and I'll address who's on the phone. So, here's a question from Diana. Do you have to get hormones replacements when one is removed? I'm assuming that the one that's removed is an ovary. when there's two ovaries, of course, and I'm assuming that's what you mean, Diana, and please call in at 888-502-8886 if I don't have that correct. Depends. You know, the classic thing that everyone is told is, hey, you only need one. You don't need two of anything. You know? Well, I don't find that to be so. I find that sometimes when someone loses a whole ovary, that there's diminished female hormones. The beautiful thing is if you work with someone who is really trained and knowledgeable and skilled in the area of hormones, female hormones, you can be assessed. And the two ways to have that be assessed is, number one, is they'll try and check into symptoms of lowered ovarian function, and there is a lot of them. If you're not getting enough estrogen, for example, if you're not getting enough progesterone, enough testosterone, yes, testosterone, very important female hormone. Yes, males have more of it, but testosterone is critical, adequate levels for women. And DHEA and other hormones, that can be assessed both through your story, through an examination, and through laboratory testing. So that's what I'd recommend. I'm supposing, I'm making a guess that you're asking that question because maybe you're wondering. And at any rate, we also have written a book on this, Happy Healthy Hormones, which lists the symptoms of ovarian deficiency, and see if you recognize yourself in that, or you can Google it on the internet. See if you recognize any symptoms of estrogen deficiency or progesterone deficiency in yourself. Yes, it is possible to get diminished ovarian hormones from the removal of one ovary. And is it possible that your one ovary that is left is still producing a sufficient amount of hormones? Possibly, but good question to ask and good checking in about, because you want the right levels of these ovarian hormones. And there's a lot of easy ways and also technical ways for someone who is very well versed in this field to assess you on that. And here's a question from Art. Are there any supplements or herbs that I can take for my hiatal hernia? Also, I raised the head of my bed like you suggested. My wife didn't like it at first, but my heartburn is so much better. Also, she said that I am snoring less. Woo! Love it! Yes, sir. You've done two of the biggest things. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's you raise the head of the bed and then gravity pulls any contents that are in the stomach down towards the feet or down towards the output valve there called Uranus. And it's much harder for the acidic contents of the stomach to regurgitate up that esophagus. So I love that method, and to tell you the truth, the head of my bed is permanently elevated 6 inches. And the other interesting thing that you say there is that it can help with snoring. A very important thing to help with snoring, because snoring, of course, makes it challenging for anyone that we are sleeping with in the same bedroom. And even more significant than that, snoring can be a sign that you're not quite getting enough oxygen during the night. That's a big deal. And there's symptoms of you've probably heard of it, some variation of sleep apnea. You can be assessed. There's now this equipment that you can take home and put on you when you sleep, and it can tell, does your oxygen levels drop in the middle of the night? But bravo for you, because there are many people who've raised the head of the bed for reflux and found the snoring diminished. In fact, there's videos of that on the internet recommending that. Now, any other supplements? Well, before I go to supplements, I'd like to say the consequence of a hiatal hernia, which means that the opening that the intestine, starting with the esophagus, passes through the diaphragm and connects with the stomach, that opening is an opening. And that opening can enlarge and allow some of the stomach to pooch up into above the diaphragm, and that's very irritating to the esophagus. And so the consequence of hiatal hernia is acid reflux. It shoots up into that esophagus and can burn it and irritate it and lead to short and long-term inflammation. Not a good thing to do. So before we turn to supplements, in I Wonder Doctor, in the videos, we list a lot of things that can provoke another aspect of acid reflux, because that's what you want to prevent. The hiatal hernia, not too consequential, except for the reflux part. So how do you prevent the reflux? Well, there's another major thing that's related to reflux. It's the muscular closing of that connection between the esophagus and the stomach. That can relax. That's the lower esophageal sphincter, and it can relax when it shouldn't be relaxed. Once food goes into the stomach, that sphincter should squeeze closed and hold closed. Yet there's many foods that can provoke the opening of that esophageal sphincter. And let's take some of the more common ones, like, for example, tomatoes of all things, and caffeine of all things, and alcohol. That makes pretty much sense. And there's a list of those foods. We list them in I Wonder Doctor. You can Google them. What foods can relax the lower esophageal sphincter and lead to acid reflux? You want to know that list? I'm very careful personally about that list, because I have that situation, so I've gotten really on the ball about one by one eliminating the foods, and then of course eliminating the foods that can burn the esophagus. So one of my favorite things, I spent a lot of my adult life in New Mexico. I love New Mexican chili, oh my God, but I've had to give it up. It's a big loss in my diet, but I don't want anything that's going to irritate that lower esophageal sphincter. And here's another big one, Art. It's if you eat late at night and you go to bed, and I've done this, your stomach is still full. And it's the stomach contents that are the ultimate problem in hiatal hernia. They can shoot back up into that esophagus. So the ideal thing is to eat a lot earlier than is convenient for many of us. But I mean, one way I addressed it, I like to eat my biggest meal in the middle of the day, and I'm able to do that. We're able to cook right here in our wonderful facility, and we just had a lovely midday dinner. And yes, eat light, a couple hours before you go to sleep. I mean, how long does it take? How much before you go to sleep? Well, it depends how vigorous your digestion is. As we grow older and get diminished digestive juices, not because we, quote, grew older, we don't digest as fast. And the other thing that can slow down is the time it takes for the stomach to empty its contents into the next place upon the journey of the food as it passes through 25 feet of intestinal tract. And so it depends on how great a digester you are and how much your gastric emptying time is. So I'm saying this because you've got to individualize it. But the moral of the story is don't eat too late. And here's some supplements you can take. Digestive enzymes and even betaine hydrochloride. And we have videos on this in I Wonder Doctor under digestion, and also in the supplement store we have individualized videos for the pancreatic enzymes, the plant-based enzymes, and the betaine hydrochloride, because it's an art to get that right, because if you're digesting better and digesting faster, you have less of a chance for acid reflux. And then finally, there's a lot of things that are purported to help the injury that occurs to the esophageal lining, the burn, really, that takes place. And my favorite is deglycerinated licorice root extract. I take it in powdered form. You can mix the powder with a juice or with water. I come to where I just dip my spoon in there and I swallow the powder as dry as a powder, because I want it to take time trickling down my esophagus and to affect the burn. This is not an acid blocker or an acid neutralizer, deglycerinated licorice root extract. It's been around for a long time, and it's because it actually helps heal the esophageal lining. Deglycerinated licorice root extract, otherwise known as DGL. So there's some thoughts. As far as the supplements, the question you asked, I would enhance digestion and also add deglycerinated licorice root extract 1, 2, 3 times a day, as many as you can tolerate. Now, next question. Gerald, you sell alpha-lipoic acid for diabetes. From the description you have, I do not understand what it does or how it helps. And it looks to me like we have a question coming in from Rebecca live from Facebook, and I'll answer that next, Rebecca. But I want to continue with Art here. I'm sorry, with Gerald here. I do not understand what it does or how it helps. I found you on Amazon. I have watched all of your videos on diabetes. Thank you. You're most welcome, Gerald. Well, alpha-lipoic acid, it is one of my favorite nutritional supplements to assist diabetes. And what it does is several things. That's one of the things that's unique about it. But one of the main things it does is it reduces insulin resistance. So in the series on diabetes, we've gone into depth to explain how your wonderful insulin, which helps us so much and is so crucial and necessary for the metabolic beginnings and processing of glucose and simple carbohydrates, your own body can produce enough insulin. In fact, in adult diabetes or pre-diabetes, your body is producing more insulin than you would when you were younger, because it's trying to address the challenges it faces from increased carbohydrates. And that's usually what provokes elevated levels of insulin. And well, the body doesn't love elevated levels of insulin because insulin is very powerful and it can also be a little harmful, so the body regulates insulin very carefully. And if for some reason you have provoked the outpouring of an excessive amount of insulin, which is so common when someone eats simple carbohydrates, then what the body does is it can't put the cat back in the bag, it can't put the insulin back into your pancreas, but what it can do is it can increase the resistance to that insulin at the cellular level. So insulin, which interacts with all the cells of your body, interacts with insulin receptor sites, and it can increase the resistance of that receptor site to insulin. That's one of the main things that alpha-lipoic acid does. It helps reduce insulin resistance so that the insulin you produce is more effective in moving the carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates, the glucoses and the sugars out of the bloodstream and into the cells. Thus, you don't have to produce elevated levels of insulin. But of course, I suspect that you have already caught on to, you got to eliminate the provocateur. We don't want to just artificially reduce insulin resistance. We want to lower the carbohydrate intake, that's for sure. And so if you've done that primary step, then your body's open to, okay, well, we don't have to produce insulin resistance. And so the thing that is crucial is, can you get that insulin resistance that's already been created to reduce? And alpha-lipoic acid is my favorite way to do that. Now, alpha-lipoic acid does a bunch of other things too. It happens to be a premier antioxidant. That means in a metabolism that is too robust, too over the top, you produce too many reactive species that are subject to oxidation, otherwise known as getting rancid. That's what happens to butter when it turns dark. You've left it on the table overnight. Those fats in that butter got rancid. They oxidized. It's a chemical reaction that your body knows how to handle oxidation, but sometimes you challenge it with too much oxidation, and it's better to be able to supplement and augment the number of antioxidants. It turns out in diabetes there's a heightened state of oxidation, so having a premier antioxidant is also excellent. If you Google alpha-lipoic acid and how it affects diabetes, you're going to come across pretty early on in that list a scientific article that's online in the public medical index and assimilation of all the medical articles. It's got a lovely article in there on many of the other functions that alpha-lipoic acid does, including one of the consequences of long-standing or diabetes is you start getting injury to neurons, and you start getting something called peripheral neuropathy, and you start getting funny sensations and loss of sensation in your legs, for example. And alpha-lipoic acid is known to be beneficial to reverse that. So there's three big ones: reduce insulin resistance, premier antioxidant, and helping with diabetic neuropathy. These are three functions. There's more. Can you believe it? It helps the muscles. But that's why I love alpha-lipoic acid for diabetes. And let's see, here we have a question from Rebecca live from Facebook. Do you have a problem eating lettuce with hiatal hernia? And well, these dietary questions, I mean, My favorite way to assess any dietary question is trial and error. Lettuce is what? It's a wonderful thing. It's loaded with fiber. It's got vitamins and minerals in it. And yet raw foods, especially in an acute state, can irritate an irritated lower esophageal sphincter. So some people have to resort to cooking all their foods when they have acid reflux. But in the long run, lettuce and all the multitude of vegetables that have a rich fiber content, you want to be able to integrate those back into your diet. So you may have to go through a phase where you eliminate raw foods, and then bring them back in at a certain time. And here's something that I meant to mention to Art. One of the number one things, and I want you remind me of it, Rebecca, is what another thing you can do for a hiatal hernia? Really, we're talking about acid reflux. There's two things. One relates to breathing, and the other relates to chewing. One of the greatest things that anyone can do to assist their digestion, which is very crucial to get things moving, keep them moving, is digest the stuff, is chew, 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 chew. So I love one of my granddaughters who, she is a slow eater and a major chewer, and she's still eating while many of us have long finished. And I've always told her, because it's been a little embarrassing to her, that she's still eating, that she's the only one at the table who has done this properly. Chew, 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 chew. There's hardly anything more potent that you can do to assist in digestion. Hiatal hernia, which is the hiatus, the opening through which, again, the esophagus passes to where it connects with the stomach, and that opening can enlarge, is really made out of muscles. It's the whole diaphragmatic muscle. And so any way that you can exercise that diaphragm and strengthen that diaphragm, that can make a difference. And you know, like anything else in medicine and health, there's a lot of different things. So here's something that is just a double whammy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate to you rapid and deep breathing. Because what does that do? That makes that diaphragm move up and down and up and down. And like any muscle in your body, you lift weights with that muscle, you're going to watch your muscles get stronger over time. And that's what we want, because the muscular strength of that diaphragm really helps close up a hiatal hernia. And so here's the exercise. And how do you know if you're exercising your diaphragm? Your belly's moving in and out. Because when the diaphragm comes down, the belly goes out. When the diaphragm goes up, so if someone would be so kind in our crew to bring me a Kleenex after that particular exercise, that breathing exercise, what if you did that 3 times a day? Deep breathing, rapid breathing, where your belly went out, diaphragmatic breathing. You would strengthen that diaphragm, and it would give you a chance to thank you so much. Thank you. It would give you a chance to strengthen that diaphragm. Now, did these changes take place in a week? No. But how about for a couple years? And here's the double whammy. We all need to breathe more. Who's breathing enough on this planet? This is a whole subject, and I want to go into this at another time. But if you stop to do that 3, 5, 10, 20 times a day, you'd also get more oxygen, and everything works so much more wonderfully with oxygen. And best case yet is you train yourself to breathe more, because I've wondered about sleep apnea. Because part of it is we all got lost focus around the importance of breathing. And so that we get used to a less than adequate breathing. And so we're not breathing enough during the day, and we're not breathing enough during night, and you're not getting enough oxygen during the night, and that is highly consequential. So one subject in medicine leads to another, but it's the great stuff. Look at this. Things that can make a major difference to you: breathing and chewing. Oh my God. This is such a big deal. As far as our health coach goes, I mean, what I've committed to one of our health coaches is I want her help with my number one thing that's on my radar. I've had many, many things over the year, but one thing that it's like the elephant in the room, I know I need to change, but I don't do it. I start doing well, but I forget it, is to drink more water. So that's an agreement I have with my health coach. And sure enough, as I showed up today, there's a big glass of water sitting there. So why am I saying that? Because it can be so helpful to identify that one thing that can really make a difference for you, and just focus on that. And because I know what I have several health projects, but I know what my number one is these days. So let's see. And here's a question from Tammy. Is MS, which is multiple sclerosis, hereditary? It's a very interesting question, because hereditary, what is the number one thing for 99% of the human beings on this planet that's hereditary? I'm not talking about 1%, which is a different story. But for 99% of us, what's truly hereditary is good health. We are so well designed to produce good health. So in order to produce anything, any illness that you can make, and including those illnesses that may have a genetic link to them, it's not so much the genes you have, but how you treat those genes. What do I mean, how you treat those genes? They're designed for health. But if you do things that are provocative and harmful to your body has to make a change to adjust to the change. And where does it change? In the genetics of health. So you start moving towards adaptations that are not optimal. They don't relate to our original design. And if that answer is blurry for you, really, let me cut to the chase. There are people who have hereditary illnesses, so to speak. They're called hereditary illness. Let's take, for example, Alzheimer's disease. I mean, they've gotten down to where the actual genes that can relate to Alzheimer's, and a person can have one of those genes, or even two of them, and two of them, that double whammy increases the risk for Alzheimer's for the person who has two of those genes. But does that matter? Well, the main thing it should do, if those genes are identified, or if you have a relative, Tammy, that has multiple sclerosis, the main thing that should do is inspiring you to have that be the final thing that helps boost you over the line to where you're committed to your health. Because there is 1,000 million things that can happen to us, and if there's something that you can take on to really devote yourself to good health, because you'll want it. We all want it. And I'd say the older you get, the more you're going to want it. So people who have a double whammy gene for something like Alzheimer's can prevent or reverse Alzheimer's. Reverse, they've got the genes, they've gotten Alzheimer's. It has now been shown by Dr. Dale Bredesen, he's got a wonderful book out there called The End of Alzheimer's, that Alzheimer's, even with two genes, can be reversed. What does that tell us? It doesn't matter that much that you are at high risk for something that you have a double gene propensity to develop. We're all left with the same thing. We have to eat right, and we have to exercise properly, and we have to develop skills to respond to the stress of our life. Not the stress of our life, it's how well we respond to it. And if there's any toxicity involved, and we've been exposed to toxins, we have to detoxify our home, our car, and ourselves sometimes. So it all comes down to the same thing. So I wouldn't be concerned if you have 3 people in your family who have multiple sclerosis, in the sense that, okay, you're vulnerable to that. So what do? You take on at an early age what it takes to become healthier and healthier and healthier. You learn to treat those genes right, all of our genes. And so when someone feels cursed by possible hereditary illness, I can always back anyone with a specific diagnosis out of that back into, that should just be the red alert that it's so important to commit to our health. I mean, doing the things we need to do And they all come down to choices that we can make in our daily lives. It's those moment-to-moment choices. How we eat, what we eat, if we're taking any of the proper nutritional supplements, if we need to detoxify both our bodies and in our environment, and getting the right amount of exercise, not too little, oh boy, and not too much, oh boy. And then the elephant in the room, not the elephant in the room, which is, can I actually do it? But the elephant in the room is, can I acquire the information, tools, and support to reduce and improve how I respond to the stresses in my life, and I don't trigger the fight or flight biology that is very detrimental and can lead to illnesses. So may this inspire you, Tammy. I suspect you've got some concern that there's someone in your family, so use that concern to inspire you to what you're going to have to do anyway. And if it isn't MS, it's going to be some other multitude of a million diagnoses that we learn in medical school. What really matters is how we're conducting our lives and how much are we devoted to our own health. So, you turned your dial to I Wonder Doctor, and I also want to remind you that if you have issues, you now have access to a human being in I Wonder Doctor, a live human being. Although you can, every Thursday at 1 o'clock, you can call in questions and I'll answer them live. And also, you can email us questions in the Ask a Doc section. And also, you can connect up with a live health coach that can assist you in doing that one thing that is up for you to do first. And then take on number 2 once you've succeeded at that. So it's always a pleasure and privilege to be with you all, and my thank you to all of the multitude of folks who have made I Wonder Doctor possible. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And until next week, I'm Dr. David Rosensweet.